Strategic Command at Offutt Air Force Base, Nebraska. He is a missileer by training. He is also the former Air Force Global Strike Command commander. Please welcome General Anthony Cotton.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Can you hear me okay? They got me wired up all kinds of ways from Sunday. I got on a lapel mic. I got these two here. I feel like I'm really something special right now. First of all, Jim, thanks for allowing me to come here. I got some prepared remarks, and then we'll open it up for some questions. But I want to say thank you for hosting this conference today. Thank you for the association for inviting me here to be here today. And then I would like to say thank you for the moderators, for the panelists, and for the guests for their participation in this conference, because it's incredibly special. I'll begin my remarks on why we're all here. And this is coming from a combatant commander's perspective. We're here because, for me, as I look at the defense contractors that are in the audience, production matters. It's incredibly important for the national defense. And as a customer, it's great to see a room full of industry experts focused on defense programs, because you'll all play a role for my success. STRATCOM can't accomplish its mission without the capabilities that the defense contractors and industry brings to the table. Speeches are great. Results are even more important. My goal is that you produce, because at the end of the day, production is deterrence. That's not an exaggeration. It's a force multiplier. It's a powerful signaling mechanism. And it's not just during conflict, but during the competition phase. So please allow me to give you my perspective as a STRATCOM commander charged with presenting forces to our national decision makers and strategic deterrent options to the President of the United States. If you've ever heard me speak previously, whether giving a keynote address or speaking to Congress, you've heard me reference the complexity of the strategic environment we find ourselves in today. But it is not a back to the future Cold War 2.0 scenario, because we aren't just dealing with one nuclear armed adversary. It is vastly more complicated than that. This is an unprecedented security environment with multiple nuclear-armed strategic adversaries who have not followed our lead as responsible nuclear powers, often working with regional actors to the detriment of a stable and open international system. Their industrial bases, though, are ramping up. Their production facilities are running around the clock. Look at China, for example, their shipbuilding industry. It's estimated to have 230 times the capacity of the United States shipyards. Operated by state-owned corporations and their subsidiaries, these shipyards aren't just producing military crafts, they're dual use, meaning they're rapidly building commercial vessels and advancing international shipping as well. General Secretary Xi's directive that China be prepared to seize Taiwan by 2027 has driven CCP investments in land, sea, and air-based nuclear delivery platforms and infrastructure necessary to support a major buildup of their nuclear forces. Despite claiming that their fast breeder reactors and reprocessing facilities are intended for peaceful purposes, China's likely aims is to produce plutonium for their weapons program. This is a strategic opponent with a rapidly advancing defense industry that recognizes the importance of production. The capacity to produce has actually been a key to strategic competition for hundreds, if not thousands of years. From the Peloponnesian War to the conflicts today, production matters. Who wants to go to war with a state that can outproduce you at speed? Who wants to be able to control escalation? The state with steady and continuous production, or the state that just started pouring concrete? Production is a war-fighting advantage, and America has relied on the ingenuity of its industry throughout its history. Imagine what World War II would have looked like without full-fledged support from the private sector. The contributions were staggering. Companies already engaged in defense work expanded their operations. Others, like the auto industry, transformed completely. Instead of cars, Chrysler made fuselages. General Motors made guns, trucks, tanks. Packard made airplane engines. By the end of the war, more than half of all industrial production in the world took place right here in the United States. Even more impressive than the scale was the speed of production. Ford Motor Company produced the B-24 Liberator every 63 minutes. Now, granted, I am not comparing a B-24 Liberator to the B-21. But on-time delivery is absolutely crucial, and American industry stepped up to the plate. Following World War II, production continued throughout the Cold War. Then something changed. Berlin Wall came down. There was no more perceived peer competitor, so we took advantage of the peace dividend. We scaled back the capacity of our defense industrial base, and for me, we life extended our nuclear portfolio. Not blaming anyone for this, we made a decision as a nation. But that peace dividend did not materialize in the long term. Guess what? Great power competition is back. That is why I speak today with a sense of urgency. The same sense of urgency that I had when I assumed command of United States Strategic Command in December of 2021. When called to provide my first posture statement to Congress, I expressed my wholehearted belief in a needed sense of urgency surrounding the modernization of our nuclear forces. I talked about the need for a continued drumbeat, continued advocacy so folks understand that our legacy systems need to be modernized. I talked about how, for the first time in history, the U.S. had multiple nuclear-armed adversaries. That was 2.5 years ago. And here I am today. And guess what? I'm beating that same drum. Here I am in my 3rd year of command, advocating with that same sense of urgency. So back at Offutt, my theme this year at StratCom is a year of acceleration. Our adversaries are accelerating. We can't afford not to. And I'm not talking an arms race. I'm talking about recapitalization of legacy systems to confront modern realities. I'm talking about peace through strength, and nothing signifies strength more than a modernized nuclear triad. There is no other element of national power that provides a deterrence value nuclear weapons provide. In line with the Secretary of Defense vision to rebuild our military, the Department is committed to the modernization of our nuclear forces. I think General Alvin, who owns 2 legs of my triad, alluded to that this morning. And there's no portfolio more in need of recapitalization than mine. The deterrent is credible today. The deterrent is credible today. But we have to complete our modernization programs to remain credible in the future. And for that, we need our industry partners. We must execute the program of record for delivery of capabilities as soon as possible. Whether it's Sentinel, Columbia, the long-range standoff weapon, known as LRSO, or the B-21. Further delay in these programs will have cascading effects. But even with on-time delivery, we need sustained production. That's why I'm advocating for more B-21s than the current program of record, to ensure our bomber force is sufficient to confront future challenges. Ladies and gentlemen, the United States and the free world will have 2 tails, the B-52J and the B-21. We also need to modernize every B-52, very capable, with new engines, upgraded radar, electronic suites. And guess what? The industry plays a key role in ensuring that we can do that on time. On land, we'll need all hands on board to bring Sentinel online, accompanied by a secure and robust NC-3 capability, a new missile, and hundreds of infrastructure projects, including hardened facilities that span 5 states. At sea, we must continue to ensure we have the capacity to produce the Ohio-class replacement, Columbia, at scale without further delay. When you talk about my portfolio at STRATCOM, the ICBMs, the submarines, the bombers, and the nuclear command and control forces that control them, the planning for these systems and their life cycles can go well into the 2080s. The difference for our modernized systems, the architectures are designed for modifications to outpace our adversary. That's why it's incredibly important that we modernize our triad. Maintaining and sustaining a credible nuclear deterrent isn't that expensive in the grand scheme of things. Current funding of the nuclear portfolio, around 4% of the DoD budget, but the return on investment, priceless. A strong nuclear deterrent provides the best opportunity for convincing other nuclear powers to engage in meaningful discussions. Ultimately, modernizing will incentivize dialogue. I think that's very much in line with this administration's goals. That said, while the triad is the foundation of deterrent capabilities, we can't ignore our conventional capabilities. Going back to the collapse of the Soviet Union, after the wall came down, we essentially maintained a fire break between our nuclear and conventional weapons and platforms. But today, my portfolio requires both. For example, long-range strike is just not about bombers by themselves. It's a system of systems that includes the bombers, the tankers. It includes weapons. It includes NC-3. It includes the geographic combatant commanders as well as my other functional partners that are combatant commanders to niche all that together. Conventional capabilities makes my portfolio more effective and efficient. Novel missile systems like hypersonic systems can't replace nuclear weapons, but they can certainly complement them. Hypersonics provide a highly responsive, long-range, non-nuclear strike capability for distant, defended, and time-critical threats without having to resort to nuclear options. They allow my mission planners to tailor strategies and plans that will enable an extended range of options for our president across all phases of conflict to encourage restraint, control escalation, and achieve strategic objectives. I'm always advocating for the rapid development and fielding of advanced conventional capabilities, kinetic and non-kinetic, cyber capabilities, space capabilities, anything that will expand the decision space and create more options for the commander-in-chief. Just look at how unmanned systems have evolved in the last 5 years. Uncrewed aerial, underwater, surface vessels, inexpensive, extremely flexible, completely expendable. The character of war is changing. Private industry can help. Data, analytics, artificial intelligence, and machine learning are rapidly changing the technological landscape in which we execute our assigned missions. At STRATCOM, we are adapting to those changes to ensure advantage and deter strategic attack without compromising on the fundamental rule that humans control decision-making. Data has always underpinned strategic deterrence, but it is imperative that we harness a modern approach to realize the full potential of data centricity to achieve decision advantage. We also can't ignore the electromagnetic spectrum and the developments occurring in that maneuver space. Many of our contemporary weapons leverage pathways and sensors that use technologies that might be susceptible to adversary exploitation. Future weapons and sensors need to have multiple redundant and resilient means of communication while operating in the contested or degraded EMS environment. Responsible and informed use of these emerging capabilities will enable our warfighters and make us more agile as an organization. But we can only use these capabilities if the defense industry produces them. There has been progress, but significant work remains. Heavy lifting is far from over. But I do want to thank you for all the support in moving the ball forward in the last few years. This past year being particularly impactful. 2024 saw the accomplishment of some very significant milestones. The B-21 testing progress enabled by a digital ecosystem. We witnessed Sentinel's revalidation post-McCurdy. LRSO remains on schedule. The Navy, the Army, and Air Force successfully tested hypersonic weapons. I rely on private industry. My successor will rely on it, and the STRATCOM commander 40 years from now will rely on it. This is a whole-of-nation effort, requiring sufficient vendors, a specialized workforce, and adequate resources to simultaneously sustain and modernize the nuclear forces. Maintaining full operational capability during this period will be challenging, but that's what I get paid the big bucks for. I just need you folks to produce so I can present options. Deterrence is about ensuring that we have the will, resolve, and capability to hold our adversaries at risk. The will and resolve comes down to American people, elected officials, the department. But the capability really depends on the folks in this room. That's why I need you to produce, so that I can present forces to our leadership, present options to the Secretary and President, and continue to present a credible strategic deterrent for our nation, our allies, and our partners. So whether you work in a shipyard, a quantum physics department, or leverage public-private partnerships to enhance critical infrastructure, your contributions are extremely important. I hope you understand how valuable your efforts are in my portfolio and the national security portfolio writ large. I do want to preserve some time for discussion, so I'll end with this. The window is closing to ramp up production to levels that will sustain us for decades. We don't have a lot of time to get it right. No programmatic margin remains, and we must maintain and sustain our legacy systems until the new ones are in place. We will continue to analyze and assess whether additional capacity and capability is required. Because if we don't get it right, we won't have an opportunity to come back and do it later. This expertise gathered here is evidence that we will succeed in this endeavor, though. I'm confident that our triad will continue to deter aggression, assure allies and partners, and allow us to achieve national objectives if deterrence fails. But I urge you to up your game on agility and produce. I truly appreciate the conference and its focus. Again, Jim, thanks so much. Thanks to all the guests and participants here for your dedicated service and support to national defense. And once again, I'm grateful to have been invited. Thank you very much, and I'm here to take some questions.
General Cotton, how you doing?
All right, now I'm going to turn on the other one. Is the green light on? Awesome. All right.
The green light is on. Thank you for what you do. I was the ASD for NCB in the first Trump administration, so I know how hard what you're trying to do is. We have heard remarks from some contractors that a full year CR will cause programmatic delays to the nuclear modernization efforts. What can be done to alleviate that? I know we have New Start now, allegedly. There's some reprogramming. Is it more just a matter of getting enough people at the contractors to ramp up production, or are there levers that can be pulled? And you mentioned the STRATCOM, you're interested in acceleration. What needs to be done to accelerate?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think, first of all, always a fallacy when folks talk about especially larger programs and programs that are already underway. And what people tend to not understand is embedded in large programs are new start pieces of a large program. So I think fundamentally it's the explanation, right? You know, next Wednesday, guess where I'll be? I'll be testifying with the SAS. So I'll make that known, is even though folks might on the surface say, well, we don't understand because those programs have already been let and you're well on your way. As all of you in the room understand, there's additional things. And what that does, it perturbs the schedule and drives a delay to the overall schedule for the larger program. And it sounds like it's easy because we tend to deal with that every single day. But more and more I hear that, folks don't realize, well, what do you mean? You got your funding, but I need a subcontractor to now start working on this piece of that, and that's a new start potentially. So I think the education piece is going to be incredibly important, especially when it comes to my portfolio. Because what's interesting about my portfolio is I think I can say this, and you can probably Wikipedia it to make sure I'm saying it true, is of all 11 of the combatant commands, I think I'm the only one that has every platform and every delivery system and every weapon being modernized all at the same time. I think I'm the only one. And I think what's even different than that is I think I'm the only one that is mandated on how to fight my war if I have to by the President of the United States. What does that mean? Well, that means that the President of the United States has said that the employment guidance is a triad. So you will have an air leg. So Cotton, you better give me some options on the air leg. You will have a land leg. So Cotton, you better give me some options on what the ICBM can do. And you will have a sea leg. So Cotton, you better give me what the SLBMs can do. Right? Where other combatant commanders can go, okay, well, I don't have this, so I have a mitigation strategy on how I can present options to meet the objectives of the president. The president already has objectives written down for me, and you know this, when it comes to nuclear options. What I might have to do is kind of go, well, Mr. President, these objectives, I can't hold that risk right now. Or the expectation that you want 96 to 100% effectiveness is down to 20% or 50% effectiveness. Or I might not be able to give them a leg at all. I think I'm the only combatant commander that is actually, that has to play by those rules. Right, so that makes STRATCOM a little different, and the commander of STRATCOM a little different. And I'm actually the sole advocate of those three legs. Because other combatant commanders don't necessarily go and say, well, we have to have this, and this. But I have to go to the Secretary of the Navy and say, I need to make sure that we're steadfast on the sea leg. I have to go to the Secretary of the Air Force and say, I need to ensure that we are actually, making do and doing what we need to do, I should say, not making do, doing what we need to do to modernize the two legs of which they're responsible for. So that's the big difference, I think, and I'm the big advocate for that.
Great. General Cotton, you touched on a couple of these themes already. Your modernization mission is exceptionally complicated because you can't have a gap in deterrence. One goes offline, we better be online, ready to go, 100% mission capable. Second, you talked about your modernization priorities. I wonder if you can dig a layer deeper on each element of the triad and how you see program execution going within those three.
Okay. Yeah, so you remember we talked, the one piece we didn't talk about is the NNSA's role in the modernization of our weapon systems at will. So that's yet another leg that's part of the stool that holds up the triad. So let's start with the air leg. B-21, really happy with the work that Northrop Grumman is doing with the B-21, the world's only sixth-generation aircraft. Now, the production rates, that was agreed upon was, I think, in a geopolitical environment that's a little different than a geopolitical environment that we'll face for decades to come. Hence, I, as a customer, would love to see larger production rates come out in regards of what we see for the B-21. I do think that the number is at minimum 100, not 100 tails. I kind of like what we used to talk about when I was at Global Strike Command, and that was at least about 145 tails is what we were looking at. Gave us about 220 bombers when the buffs are included. LRSO, long range standoff weapon. Great work by Raytheon. They're doing amazing in what we're seeing there. Once again, as we look at capacity and capability, we have to have the question on where are we looking for as far as capacity rate and on sufficiency there. But yeah, I'm ready to get LRSO out and get rid of the outcomes that we currently have. B-52J, a little worried about that. I really do want us to pay attention. That bomber, the B-52H, I got to get the T-130s on them. We got to get the modernization of the radars. It is my LRSO carrier. So I just need to make sure that the Air Force is really paying attention to the acquisition strategy in regards to the B-52J and get her out on the ramp as soon as we can on the modernization scheme. When we go to the, let's see, so B-21, B-52s, and LRSO. I think when we look at the land leg, the ICBM piece, I heard you mentioned that I was a Global Strike Commander in the past. If you recall, and the first thing I said that was going to be a mega project. And I think half of the audience said, yeah, whatever. And the other half of the audience said, yeah, whatever. Now here we are, and oh my God, it's a mega project. That doesn't mean it's a project that does not need to be accomplished. It just means that we need to kind of get up off our butts and get after it to figure out how we modernize the land-based leg and replace the Minuteman IIIs with the LGM-35 Alpha. So more work to be done there. We'll see where we are on reestablishing post Nunn-McCurdy. Leave that up to the Air Force to make the right decisions, be able to get me a platform that I need, will actually, folks in my future will need when it comes to that. I'll jump to, before I go to Columbia, I'll talk about NC3. So NC3, I think we really, really, really paid a lot of attention to NC3 since I've been at Stratcom. And I think we probably were able to put it in a place using verbiage, using methodologies that the defense industry was comfortable with, and to be frank, the services that are responsible. Air Force for about 68% and a little bit more, 20% for the Navy, and the rest to the Eaches. But being able to describe in more than an OV1 concept, but in a way that was agreeable language to not only decision makers, but also to contractors, I think put us in a better place than saying, oh, that's what you mean. That's what you needed. Well, why didn't you say that before, right? So I think we're in a better place. I think there's going to always have to be tension on the string there, though, because NC3 doesn't have an end date. It's going to be something that will always be modernized. But just like I said for the physical things, it's going to be incredibly important that we understand the architecture in which you can modernize the architecture. Sensoring monitoring is going to be incredibly important. We've already started that now with the legacy systems. But all of those safety measures that are built in are going to have to be something that can be, I call it, I don't like to say open architecture because people take it out of context and then they'll say General Cotton just said that NC3 needs to have an open architecture. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is it needs to be something that you can be able to unplug and stay with the threats that are chasing it and stay ahead of it at all times. And that's what we're looking at. It's pretty complex. It's like flying an airplane and building it at the same time. But the team is really going after that. And then finally, for Columbia. Ohio class, The Navy's doing extremely well with making sure we get as much blood out of the turnip on the Ohio class that we can. But the reality is, we've got to get Columbia to scale. And we need to pay attention on, do we have enough Columbias? You know, as we continue to have the conversation on sufficiency and capability, you know, having a back pocket understanding that we might have to have more than the current numbers that we have today, it all depends on what the administration says. So those are the three legs and where we are. So I think on the air leg, now the caveat is all of it I wish I could get, not on my watch because I leave this fall, but on my successor's watch, I would have loved to have seen some stuff sitting on the ramp or going out to sea, and you know, that may or may not happen.
Speaking of which, what are the last one or two things during your final year of your tender that you're absolutely committed to seeing through?
Oh, well, the first one is readiness of the force to be able to fight tonight. Right, so as you sit and hear us talk about, you know, we need to modernize the system, you know, understand this, it is a capable, incredible system today. It is on the back of men and women that you would not believe that does some extraordinary work, whether at Kings Bay or Bangor, whether at any of the missile sites, missile wings, or bomber wings that make it so those legacy systems can strike the fear of God to adversaries, and they do today. So that's the first thing. I always have to make sure that I have a force to present to the President of the United States that's lethal and credible, and we do today. The second part of that is ensuring that people don't chase the bright, shiny penny, right? I wish we could have done this differently 30 years ago. I wish we could have done a leg at a time, separated by a decade. But we're here, right? And I take the throat punches like it was my idea, 30 years ago that this is what we're going to do. That's fine. I don't care. But the reality is, now that we are in a modernization phase for the nuclear triad, we must run through the tape. And those are my two things.
Sir. Well spoken, sir.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
We will regroup at 12:45 sharp. Well done, sir.